On today's show, we're going to be discussing vital wheat gluten.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
On today's show, we will discuss vital wheat gluten. What it is it really vital? Do we really need it? First of all, what is this stuff? What is vital wheat gluten and how do we use it? Well, vital wheat gluten is just a natural protein found in wheat flour. Because it contains gluten, it is not recommended for people with celiac disease or any type of sensitivity to gluten or wheat, or even an allergy to these substances. That said, how is this vital wheat gluten used and why would you want to use it? Well, number one, it can be used in baked goods, specifically yeasted breads. And number two, it can be used as a vegetarian meat alternative known as seitan. Well, vital wheat gluten is a powder, and it's added to yeast bread recipes to lighten the texture of the final bread, and that will be my focus. It can actually improve the texture and the elasticity of your yeast doughs. Great news, right? Yeast breads made with a little vital wheat gluten added to the dough will tend to rise higher. The final breads can even be fluffier in texture with a finer crumb. And yeast breads with whole grains, like whole wheat flours and rye and oats and all different types of whole grains that have the bran layer in them, the breads made with them tend to be softer and not too firm, as some breads can be that contain these whole grains. And that's usually because whole grain flours contain that bran that I just mentioned, that bran layer of the grain, and can end up cutting into gluten strands that are formed during the dough making process. So vital wheat gluten actually adds and improves the gluten that does form. This is sort of cool. This is sort of a discovery. So some home bakers swear that they can even get a more professional quality yeast bread just by using this magical ingredient. That's really cool, right? So what does this mean in the scheme of bread making for you? Let's talk about the science of bread baking for a moment. What could this protein powder do for you and your breads? If vital wheat gluten is supposed to give bread doughs a lighter texture, exactly how does this work? Or even make sense? So to review a bit, when the protein in wheat flour combines with water, it forms a matrix, or this webby, stretchy structure we call gluten. This gluten is necessary for all baked goods to create some sort of strength and structure so they don't collapse. As the dough is baking in the oven, any gases that may form from the fermentation process, like carbon dioxide and air or steam, they form and then we need them to get trapped. We really want to trap them within the gluten's webby structure. These trapped gases expand under pressure in a hot oven, and they force that dough to rise, creating lift. And once fully baked, it helps to set the baked good structure. So if you want, go back to season 2 of my podcast titled The Gluten Game to review what gluten is if you need to. It's a really good show on exactly what gluten is and goes into quite a lot of detail. This vital wheat gluten, when added to yeast doughs, actually helps to create a better protein matrix, giving a stretchier gluten matrix that is higher in quality and allows more gases to get trapped, thus allowing the dough to rise that much higher than it would without it. This creates a more uniform hole structure, so when you cut into the bread, you can see tiny little uniform holes that make up the inside of your bread. Now, one caveat, you never want to use vital wheat gluten in a sourdough bread. Sourdoughs are a totally different animal and would not be made better with vital wheat gluten added to the dough. So don't waste your vital wheat gluten on your sourdough breads. So how do I know all this about vital wheat gluten? Well, I'm going to admit something to you, to be honest. I was never a true believer in vital wheat gluten. Ooh, yes, I'm admitting that to you. Until I tried some. I actually tried some recently. in several recipes. I said, you know what? Let me try it. And I was amazed. I was so amazed with the breads that I made. Just plain amazing. What a difference it made, even in my doughs with my whole wheat flour that normally are denser. And they lightened up in texture. You got to try it. And how much do you use? How much should you really add to a yeast bread recipe? Well, I recommend adding 1 heaping tablespoon of vital wheat gluten for every 2 cups of flour, no matter what type of flour it is. I add it right into the flour and all the other dry ingredients, and I am sure to really whisk it in carefully to get it evenly distributed. So, what do I say to you, bakers? Go out there, get into your kitchens, and bake breads with vital wheat gluten. You will surely enjoy the results. I guarantee it. On my next show, we'll be deciphering baking terms. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, my YouTube channel, and my website, chefgailsokol.com.